My girlfriend hasn't worked in over a year and won't help with anything at home. I'm exhausted. Am I wrong for wanting to leave? I, 34F, have been with my girlfriend, 42F, for about 7 years. I'll call her Faith. This is my first serious relationship. In my 20s, I dated around but deliberately avoided relationships. I wanted to finish school, get my life together, get to know myself first, and not have children. When I met Faith, we clicked immediately. She was charismatic. We both loved gaming and storytelling, and our first date basically never ended. Everything she was saying hit the right notes. She was confident and interested in me, which meant a lot because I was extremely shy and insecure at the time. Early on, she told me she was polyamorous. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I was curious and agreed to try it. I'm very demisexual and tend to find people draining, so I've always leaned monogamous. At the time, though, I figured, YOLO. I was planning to become a spinster anyway. Fast forward a bit. During the first year of the pandemic, Faith and one of her partners, Mega Issue, 30s, went to pick up the 3-year-old dog that we had all agreed on, we being Faith, her roommates, and me. I rented elsewhere at the time, but this was back when we didn't know how COVID moved, so I stayed for a few months. Instead of the dog we picked out, Faith sent me a text of a whole puppy. I'll call him Stripes. Was he adorable? Absolutely. But he was traumatized and untrained. Mega Issue and I were the ones who ultimately trained him. Faith thinks she did, but she was 100% gaming, asleep, or hanging out on Discord. Don't get me wrong, I love Stripes dearly, but from the start it felt like Faith had brought home a responsibility she didn't plan to handle. In 2024, Faith and I finally moved in together without roommates. From that point on, I was the one managing almost everything related to the dog. If Stripes needed grooming, vaccines, food, or a vet visit, I had to remind Faith repeatedly. I could only afford myself and my half of the household bills. If Stripes was hungry, needed to go out, was scared, or seemed sick, he came directly to me, even if Faith was on the couch beside me. I became his primary caretaker by default. At the same time, Faith continued spending time with other partners. I often felt like I was stuck at home caring for the house and what felt like an affair baby while she was out living her life. I love Stripes, but the situation hurt. I didn't want to feel trapped by responsibilities I didn't choose. A complication happened that summer. A friend of ours, George, 30s, lost their job. Faith asked if George could move in with us temporarily, rent-free. I hesitantly agreed because I wanted to be supportive, but our place was tiny, a 2-bedroom house, and we agreed it would only be for 6 months while they got back on their feet. That timeline came and went. George staying with us dragged on, and it ended up destroying my savings. Faith would go out with her partners, and George would look to me for food. Living together also caused a lot of tension. Faith and George's definition of clean is considerably lower than mine. I was constantly vacuuming hair, scrubbing the kitchen, and throwing out rotting, forgotten leftovers. Then in 2025, Faith was laid off from her long-term job that paid over $120,000. For months before it happened, I begged her to start job hunting because it was obvious they were overworking her to finish a major project. She waved me off and said that wouldn't happen. When it did happen, her mental health crashed, and she essentially stopped functioning. She had been in therapy since before we met, but it wasn't helping. During that time, I felt incredibly alone despite living in a crowded house. Faith still had energy to see partners, but helping with the house or the dog barely happened. The sex life we did have died instantly. Why would I want to make love to someone when it felt like I was parenting them at this point? George also wasn't contributing much either, and living with a friend turned out to be far more stressful than expected. I'm never doing it again. Spring 2025, we moved back into the house Faith owns, long story involving the earlier living situation. It's in a nice neighborhood, but the place has always carried some bad memories from earlier in our relationship. I was physically exhausted because neither Faith nor George helped with packing up the house until I screamed about it. 2 days before moving, neither of them had lifted a finger or started packing their own things. In hindsight, I should have just found a condo and moved into it, but love makes you compromise and give too much grace. George eventually got a job. And then quit. Around the same time, I got laid off unexpectedly. I was devastated, but I immediately started applying for jobs because that's what you do. Living is expensive, and it doesn't stop because your security gets ripped away. I cried, I screamed, but you still have to keep functioning. I eventually found a job working overnight, splitting my brain across time zones and learning new software at rapid speed while trying to keep the house from completely falling apart. Now it's 2026. George has a job and pays their part, but they still don't clean. Faith has no interest in returning to the corporate world. She spends her time gaming in hopes of earning streaming revenue or messaging her newer partner she met last year. Mega Issue is out of the picture now. Meanwhile, the house is still barely functioning. We still have repairs that haven't been handled. The house is still full of boxes from moving back in a year ago. The yard is overrun with weeds. Stripe's vaccines are 2 years overdue. He hasn't had a bath in ages. Faith rarely feeds him or lets him out unless I remind her. She basically sleeps all day and games all night. We've had countless conversations. I mean, we have laid it all out with no filters. We make plans, apologize to each other, and promise things will change. And then nothing actually changes. I'm exhausted. I don't want to be in a relationship where I have to constantly push someone to participate in basic responsibilities, especially when I'm the one working all day. I quit and went back to a previous company, so the stress is familiar, but now I also have to be presentable to office coworkers again. I don't know what this is, but it has long felt like weaponized incompetence. She claims she is offering me emotional support, and she does. Sort of. In the form of weed, a hug, a forehead kiss, and kind words. But you know what would be support? Taking out the trash. Putting dirty clothes in a basket. Regularly moving personal clutter out of shared living areas. Taking care of Stripes without me bringing it up. I have tried spreadsheets, shared calendars, Discord groups, pinned messages, and direct texts. She hears me, and then just doesn't do anything. I have stopped reminding her about sending us requests for our portions of the house bills. Will she remember? I don't know. I've just stopped doing anything that isn't for me or taking care of Stripe's daily needs. Sometimes she will surprise me and say she cleaned the living room, where she is 90% of the time, as if I should praise her for it when it was entirely her mess to begin with. Our finances are separate, thankfully, but she is on my health insurance. I begged her to create a lease for me and George last year, but she won't. So I could just up and leave, but that feels cold and wrong. I also still have about 65% of my belongings packed because part of me is afraid I'm making a mistake by staying. At this point, I'm seriously thinking about planning my exit, but I don't even know how to start untangling everything. I love Faith and Stripes, but I'm tired. She is not showing me any action. She keeps talking, but there is zero follow-through. I understand that I have been a doormat. In the last 3 years, I have turned a new leaf, found confidence in myself, and brought my concerns directly to her so we could address problems head-on. I continue to grow and become more certain of myself. Am I wrong for wanting to leave? And if not, what is the best way to start separating our lives? Final update, folks, thank you for the responses. Reading this back with fresh eyes. Yeah. I didn't realize just how long this was going to be. Why am I putting up with this? Our relationship started during the pandemic. Our dating life was confined to the house. We didn't go out the way people traditionally do. Once the world opened up again, it felt like our relationship could truly begin, since Mega Issue wasn't in the picture and we could actually go out and do things. I thought, this is our chance. Things are going to change. I have always been told relationships take work and are rarely 50-50. Sometimes you give 70 and your partner gives 30. Sometimes it is 40-60, and so on. I thought I was doing my part as a supportive partner, but the years kept passing. But yes, I'm scared of being alone. My self-esteem has been low, but I am working on it. My overnight job taught me confidence and helped me take ownership of myself. I think it was one of the biggest wake-up moments that broke through my survival mode. Many of you mentioned that she is using me. She is definitely using my mental and physical labor. I neglected to mention that she has her own savings, but that will eventually dwindle if she doesn't get a job or send out requests for utilities. Until my finances are replenished, I can't afford to move out into my own place again just yet. Living alone in my tiny condo is bliss. I absolutely refuse to rent rooms in houses again. I did that for 10 years through Craigslist or with friends, and I am done with it. My parents' house is not an option because they are outside my company's 90-mile radius. For now, my plan is to donate or sell anything I don't need and slowly move items into a small storage unit. The rent here is cheap for the location, so I will take advantage of that and aggressively pay down my remaining debts, then put the rest directly into savings. I will focus only on myself and my needs. I love Faith, but this is her house, her dog, and her renter. I need to stick to my boundary this time. I also forgot to add the obligatory note, this is a throwaway account because I don't want this post linked to my main account that people in my life know about.